I've got this really cool and easy mod that I want to show you how to install today. Now, I wasn't planning on making this video. This all happened when I was putting together this other video about this really innovative strap mod. That's really awesome, by the way. You definitely don't want to miss out on that one. Now, everything we're going to do today, including that mod, is all based around Clapton's Woman Tone. And I want to show you how and why it all works, because I've actually never really seen that talked about. I've also found some really interesting info that could put to bed that whole Clapton Capacitor mod rumor, so that's going to be super interesting. So while making that other video, I found this short clip of Clapton talking all about his tone back in the late 60s, and it is just ultra fascinating. Actually, I've got that whole entire interview on my website if you want to check it out. There's a link down in the description. During that interview, he demonstrates woman tone unaccompanied, which is super important, as you'll find out soon. So what Clapton says is you select either the neck, the bridge, or middle pickup, and then you roll your tone to 0 and have your volume on full, and that's how you get that sound. Now let's look at how and why this works and what is actually going on, because I bet there's loads of guitarists out there that don't know this about their tone control. Okay, let's check this out. So this is a plot graph of what happens to your pickup as you roll that tone control off. If you've watched this channel before, you'll know all about a pickup's resonant peak. That's the little boosted frequency range of a pickup. Now with no tone control, the boost is actually high. It probably shouldn't be quite that high, but it's a little higher. Then with your tone control on full, you can see that resonant peak is diminished slightly. As you roll that tone control down, you can see that that resonant peak is being diminished and your tone is just slowly dying away. So as we get to 1 on that tone control and 0, watch what happens here. The resonant peak just moves to a new position in a lower frequency band. Now, why is that? Let's quickly draw a tone circuit. So, we've got the pickup. This is your volume control, so beautifully drawn. And this is your tone control, tone. Tone is set up as a variable resistor, as you probably know, right? And here's your 22 nanofarad capacitor. So if you're familiar with this channel, what is essentially happening here is a more extreme version of what I did in that Green Gizmo pickup reverser project. The capacitor just ends up being in parallel with this pickup, shifting that resonant peak. So with the tone control on full, there is some resistance here between the signal and that capacitor. But when you roll the tone control all the way to 0, essentially, you can just replace that with a wire. It's like it doesn't exist anymore. So it ends up becoming just a capacitor to ground. And that is now, that's the pickup ground, that is now in parallel with, with the pickup. So it is adding its capacitance to the pickup's capacitance, which is not very much. It's only around 100 picofarad for a humbucker. So that is going to shift that resonant peak that we saw in that last diagram into a lower frequency range. So it boosts frequencies in that lower range. So that's why a fully rolled off tone control still has all that power and push compared to a partially rolled off one, because instead of just diminishing that resonant peak, it actually creates a whole new one in a lower frequency band. That led me to the next really interesting thing. There's a lot of debate about what capacitor Clapton uses inside his guitars, and some people say he modified it to a 15 nanofarad capacitor, while others think he is still using the stock 22 nanofarad. So what I did is I took a small section of audio from the interview where he is demonstrating woman tone, and you can hear when the notes approach or land on that resonant peak, there is a certain sound to them. There's just more power to them, and they sort of jump out at you. So have a listen to this. This is that small section of audio I was talking about. So I took a basic frequency analyzer and put it on that clip, and you can see here that the frequency is between 400 and 500 hertz, and the note he's playing at the time is an A note, which is 440 hertz. So the next thing I did was use an online calculator to find the resonant peak frequency of a typical PAF humbucker. And I used the values I measured from a great sounding PAF from a vintage Gibson. I think it was an ES345 that came into the workshop. Look at the results. With a 15 nanofarad capacitor, the resonant peak frequency is 554.1 hertz, around about. But with a 22 nanofarad capacitor, the frequency is 457.5 hertz, which is almost the exact same as the dominant frequency in the audio clip, which was around 440 hertz. Just for clarity, I left off the cable capacitance and the pickups capacitance, which is only probably about 100 picofarad, maybe a couple of hundred for that cable. And that would have just shifted it lower and even closer to that 440 hertz anyway. Man, I thought that was actually pretty interesting. Definitely not definitive, but if I had to put money on it, I would say that Clapton is just using the stock 22 nanofarad capacitor. Now, with all that in mind, let's get into that mod, which is going to put your guitar into instant woman tone mode. Okay, let's crack into this mod. Now, there's obviously a lot more going on with Clapton's tone. There's obviously his whole signal chain, and probably the biggest obstacle to achieving it would actually being Eric Clapton. Like, I believe a big part of what makes a person's tone is actually the player themselves. But as always, getting it right at the source, i.e. the guitar, is a good way to get you into that ballpark. Now check the links in the description. If you're a Plus member on my Fourth Wall site, I've got a wiring diagram there for you, and I also run through that in a sort of special video showing you a whole bunch of different variations and other mods and things that you can try if you want to be able to tweak this to how you like it. So definitely go down in there and check that out. So what do we need today? We need a push-pull pot. In this case, it's a 500K push-pull pot. You're going to need a capacitor, a 22 nanofarad capacitor. Got a bit of hookup wire, this sort of gross blue one that I kind of want to use up, and you're going to need some solder and, you know, the usual bits and pieces. So obviously the lugs down here, they just get wired up as per usual. You've got ground, you've got your hot lug if it's a volume control, and over here you've got your input lug. So keep all that obviously the same. The lugs on the switch here, this is the stuff that we're going to be dealing with now. So we want to wire our capacitor right here. So let's do that now. I'll try and do that with the camera. One cool way to do these too is just to wire the legs like that, like sort of feet going one way, because it can be really hard to get these in, and then just push across. See how it sort of just sits quite nice? I wonder if I can show you there. Kind of like that. Right, let's just tack this in. Oh, that's the capacitor in. I'm just going to bend this up on its legs. Super professional. Right, and then you just need a couple of wires. I'm going to clip a couple of these. How's that looking? That's looking pretty good. I have to say, soldering around a camera is just so uncomfortable to get on these wacky angles. Anyway, that is basically it. So all you've got to do now is, if this is your volume control here, one of these wires can just connect down. I mean, we could have just used like a solid bus cord, but anyway, one of them connects down to there on your input side. So where the signal is coming in from that switch, just go straight into there, and this side is going to go to ground. Now this one could have gone up anywhere where there's ground, but it's probably going to be on the back of this pot here. So it'll be soldered kind of like that here. These other two lugs just get left open. So what's actually happening is, when this pops out, this is a push-push pot actually. So when this pops out like this, these two lugs here, this lug and this lug are connected, and that one and that one. And when you pop it back in, then the center lug and these back ones are connected together, and they're not going anywhere. So you're essentially back to stock again. What you end up getting is 22 nanofarads to ground right from where your main signal comes into this pot here. So it's like you've instantly rolled your tone control to nothing. So that is the mod, guys. So let's see what it sounds like. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this mod. So I've got everything full up here. I'm on the bridge pickup, and this is the stock sound we've got. Okay, so if I just pull this out. She sounds pretty mean. I really like that sound. Okay, so here's the neck pickup. And this is it modded. Obviously it's going to sound different depending on what pickups you put in. And I've got some bit more information over on my Fourth Wall page about that if you want to check that out. There's some links in the description. It's quite an easy mod to install, and it's actually a tone that I reckon I would actually use. It's something that I've never really experimented before. So make sure you chuck that in your guitar. Let me know down in the comments how it goes for you, and we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.